What the Heck's your source for Warhammer Underworlds in under 30 actions contained within a single activation. I'm your co-host, Davy. With me, as always, I have my electrifying co-host, Phil. How are you, Phil?
Hey, doing all right.
Yeah. We are coming at you in context. This is the FAQ FAR has just dropped. It's actually Sunday,
Yeah.
Mother's Day, the 8th of May. And yeah, it was the mother of all releases, so we still got content to work on for this. So
Absolutely crazy.
yeah, there's a lot in that FAQ FAR. That's not our topic for today. We're going to be talking about we're going to be doing a live build of a Exiled Dead deck, building championship. We've both seen them in Rivals and Rivals Plus at this point, and
Yep.
we want to work something out and then test drive it a little bit. But first step is putting it together. But any quick thoughts on that FAQ FAR?
I mean, it did what we kind of needed it to do in terms of dealing with Markov and his infinite loop action, which is good to get that taken care of right away. And then, I mean, I guess restricted a whole bunch of healing cards.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess I don't know if that was a thing that needed to happen, but I suppose it probably makes sense. Healing is good for the big boys. And then I don't know, some of the FAQs, I think, some of the FAQs have been probably having very unintended consequences, particularly loaded with plunder one. So
yeah, this being a thing that says that basically changing previous wordings, or not changing wordings, but changing previous rulings, saying that if a card says a friendly fighter with X, that can include out of action fighters, and so what it's really doing, I think what they're signaling is like they're going to try and be a lot cleaner with their writing. I think they're probably templating a little bit better. So specifying surviving enemy fighters. I don't know if we'll see errata for some of the old stuff. It does make weird things like you can score 2 glory because Ripa's laying in a hole dead with a pile of loot stacked on top of him. So
yeah. I don't know. Very strange. We'll see what happens. I haven't even bothered to wade into a lot of it because I know I've been seeing a lot of chatter online, and it's like, man, this is just crazy. I'm not even going to try because we'll need more official answers than anything that anybody can come up with.
Yeah. And then the other big things for me was forsaking scant resources, which in my opinion, I had some really enjoyable games doing play and counterplay, but I'm also not like heartbroken it's gone. It seemed a little unnecessary to do to me, but that's philosophical for me. One thing I'm a little more opposed to is irradiating Shadowkeeper into
an illusion.
Into an illusion. I like the solution, except for the fact that I do not like irradiating cards, and this comes from doing a lot of teaching these days, a lot of introducing new folks or getting people used to it, and it feels real bad if you're like, hey, I know you think your card says that, but it doesn't. Here's what it actually says. That can be some feel bad when there's already kind of a lot of stuff to process for people. But if you want a whole episode on that, there is Path to Glory podcast out there that they now are back up to 3. They've got Jason Murray, Zach, and Aman all doing that, and I think the dynamic of the 3 of them is pretty good. Zach's kind of a good head for the stats and numbers and such, which I always enjoy having that counterpoint available. Jonathan used to provide that, and now it is returned. So but I guess that kind of leads us into community shout outs. I wanted to shout out the Northwest Underworlds community, kind of interact with them some on Twitter. That's at NW Underworlds. They've been doing a whole lot of stuff at Element Games in Manchester, working on recruiting people. So throwing out, they're having meetup nights. Looks like their next one's Tuesday at 6:30 p.m. That'll be in the past by the time you hear this. But if you're in that area or close enough to that area, it looks like they're doing regular sort of teaching level stuff. So Rivals Plus looks real friendly, and looks like they get a pretty good crowd out there too. So kind of excited to see them doing it while we're doing our own thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had our own little community. We felt like we may not get to do a whole episode on it, but we did want to acknowledge all the folks who came up. So we had our own community event here, right?
Yeah. We did just a short Rivals Plus beginner friendly tournament. It was all best of one, and we had a pretty good turnout. We were expecting close to 20, and we got 16. So right where we wanted to be in terms of our expected numbers, and it was really good.
Yeah.
And really looking forward to doing more tournaments locally now that things have opened up some more, and we've got some people coming back into the game.
Yeah. A lot of new and returning players. Some that are close enough to travel on the regular, and we're going to be trying to do quarterly events. Likely the next one will be championship, and we'll get the information out of that soonly. But we even found some folks like Emmy, who is by and large, you call her Madison adjacent. She's kind of not too far out of town, so she's talking like she's going to be dropping in as well. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And our very own Jazz took it out. So brought her Crimson Court all the way to the top, which was pretty cool.
Definitely stomped me, that's for sure.
Stomped me. I actually played her in the finals, and I was having a minor crisis. It's like, man, it's gonna be super awkward. Like, I've been up here making announcements. Vint has been the one running the mechanics of the tournament, but like then I'll go play my games, and like I had a real good game against Matt's Exiled Dead. That was really fun. Karsus, that was one of those Reaver matches where you get wiped out and still win. So that always feels good. And
yes.
Karsus got to have kind of live pretty close to the dream where he was the only guy left alive. I knew he wasn't going to live. He was like on 1 health, and Deintalos was inspired. So I could either charge and try to kill Deintalos and maybe live, or I could charge the horde of zombies.
Yeah.
So I did that, did the whirling attack, like spun my axe around in circles, killed a guy, and then had the fueled by slaughter to attack again. So like made another. So he just went and made like 3 attacks in the activation, killed a couple guys, scored a couple objectives for me, and then promptly died.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that got to play Emmy, her lizards. That was super fun. Got to play Alex with his black powder, who were really scary. I thought I was losing that for the entire game until I didn't. So, but then I get to Jazz, and I was like, it's like, man, it would be so awkward if I like win this, because I've been up here and I have to be like, announce myself as the winner. Like, that's lame, but it would be more lame to like not play full out. So I guess I'm just gonna go for it. And no worries there, because Jazz longboarded me. I didn't even see it coming. I was like, yeah, this board seems fine. And she's like, okay, turn it sideways though. I was like, oh my god.
The worst.
Yeah, I'm so proud right now, but also I'm in a huge amount of trouble. So yeah. Anyway, didn't mean to talk about all my games, but it was awesome to see all those people out there, see a bunch of people excited to play. And I feel like people left the day energized for more, and that was really awesome. So
yeah,
if you're listening to this and you're one of the fine folks who came out, helped out, then thanks to you for making a great day like that possible.
Yeah, and we'll definitely be doing more, so keep an eye out. I think the hope is to do them about quarterly, so
yeah.
If you're hearing this and you're in and around the Madison area and you feel like you can make it out, please come join us.
Please do. But let's get on to it. That's kind of what we got onto. So we'll skip the what the hex pieces as now. Let's build an Exiled Dead deck, right?
Yeah, let's do it.
Weird warband. Now we're not going to break down every fighter. There's a lot of like card by card breakdowns. But just give me the overview. Like, how do you see this warband if you're going to describe it, and give me your elevator pitch for this warband, I guess.
Yeah. So, a very swarmy, sort of like wave of undead, sort of never ending waves of undead, I guess, because they can all be revived pretty easily as well. Yeah, that's sort of been what I've been seeing. What about you?
Yeah, you say very easily brought back. Uh, it's almost like well, like in my most recent game, and to be fair, Matt was new to the warband. I'd have to remind him, like, because he'd be like, okay, I'm gonna do the dance. Uh,
Yeah.
there was something he wanted to do. He wanted to move or he wanted to attack, and we get done with it, and then I'd be starting my next activation, like, oh, you actually get a guy back. Like,
Yeah.
it was just like an on the side bonus to stuff he was already doing.
Yeah.
And when you're
Yeah.
Reavers and trying to get 3 people to be dead and stay dead, you're like, oh no, I
Yeah.
might be in
It
trouble. So
feels really rough
yeah.
when you're trying to get the kill, like the objectives that score for having things dead. It's like, well,
Hmm.
they're just not, unless you can kill Deintalos and Markov, they're just not going to stay dead.
Yeah.
So that's like, it's just pure volume and value. Like, there's nothing super efficient, there's nothing super like powerful, but it's just lots.
Yeah.
Um, which is interesting. It's different. Uh, it sort of feels like what Sepulchral Guard were supposed to be.
Mm.
Um, although maybe that's not really the case, but it kind of feels like that evolution to me.
Yeah, it does. I mean, these are themes that we see in the undead in the death faction war bands.
Mm-hmm.
Is lots of small guys, ways to make them move more efficiently because there's so many of them, and then often finding ways to score off of or hit harder or more accurately if you can gang up on things.
Yeah.
They frequently have that sort of mechanic going on. So obviously not without exception, but still. Um, so one of the first things that you do when you're sitting down with a warband you haven't built before is I kind of give it another flip through the rivals deck. Like
Yeah.
what are their faction cards? What do they got? Um, my takeaway going through these, and I'd be interested in your thoughts, like at least on objectives, it's like, well, there's a fair amount of relatively reliable. Like I can get a number of these end phases off, but they're basically all one glory with a short exception. And it starts to feel scary, especially when you're like worried about bleeding glory on the other side, right? So
Very much so.
yeah,
Like they have lots of stuff that's like, oh, this is super easy. But then you look at the end, like you get all your objectives put together and you're like, oh, 13 glory? That's maybe not enough. Let's see if we
yeah,
can switch some of these out.
yeah, yeah. Because they bleed it. I mean, I think I killed Vlash 3 times in one
Yeah.
match, one game. So they go down, and although they come back up, they're given a glory when they do so. So the glory ceiling is certainly a consideration there. Um, the gambits, there was a surprising number of gambit spells in here. I think there was 4 gambit spells to 6 gambit ploys,
Yeah.
and uh, that's a very sort of specific route to go. The only real reward, they have a couple of objectives that are magic related. One for getting, uh, I always want to call him Regulus, getting Markov,
Deintalos. Oh,
getting
Markov.
Markov to cast a spell, and
Oh,
one if you somehow
oof.
cast 3 spells.
Yeah.
Um, we'll talk more about that when we come back around. So those things make you those set of things kind of make you think like, okay, well maybe there's spell stuff that we need to do, and there's even some upgrade action that involves that. So depending on how heavy you want to lean in that, I thought the upgrades to me seemed like the most interesting part. That like they're the most cards that I was excited about in their upgrade section. So
Yeah.
for that. But yes, other things to think about when we're making this is traditionally you would see a horde warband, not always, but very often, be interested in holding objectives. Now, if I'm talking holding objectives in the classic sense, we got problems
Yeah.
because these guys are all beasts, which it's very easy to overlook because it's a symbol now.
Very.
If you are not used to looking for that, like us old timers, expecting it to be
Hmm.
spelled out for you, you blow right by. The first time I saw these guys open them up, I was like, you start daydreaming of decks. I'm like, oh man, like I'm gonna get Phantom Fists on one guy. He's gonna stagger them for the rest. They're gonna get bonuses. I'm gonna have some Phantom Darts in there. It's just gonna go
Yeah.
crazy. like, oh man, this is going to be insane. And no, it's not.
not quite.
Yeah, can't take weapons, can't hold objectives. So a lot of the things you would traditionally do with a bunch of kind of crappy little fighters, i.e., giving them better weapons or holding objectives, you can't do as effectively. Now there is the exception that a lot of what is happening in Nether Maze these days is caring about standing on feature tokens or
Yeah.
cover as opposed to specifically objectives. So that all of a sudden kind of puts that in play. So
very much so.
yeah. And then I think my last consideration is that this is really a linchpin deck with something like, well, I don't know. I'll give my most recent example with Reavers. Sure, I've got some fighters that are more useful than others, but there's no one fighter. Generally speaking, there's no one fighter that if this guy goes down, well, I've lost the game. Usually, I can up somebody else, unless it's Rivals Plus, and I've been forced to like take 3 Garrick specific upgrades.
Right.
But yeah, this is a warband that if Deintalos goes down, man, you're probably toast. And so there's additional pressure in your deck building to figure out like, how do I build this deck to either make sure he lives, or is there a way to like, if he doesn't live, is there a way to keep going? Spoiler, I don't think so, but
I would agree from what I saw of them.
Depending on how late it happens, I guess, if they don't get to him.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Until I remember playing Eric way back in the Shadespire days. We were in the very last couple of activations of round 3, and he was retreating defensively to his warden, and I was like, what? After him, I was like, what was going on there? He's like, well, I didn't want to lose him. I'm like, well, I didn't. He was no more valuable than a petitioner at that point. Like there wasn't. So that is one thing to keep in mind. Anyway, are there any other sort of broad considerations you brought into this? Now we haven't built anything yet. We've both kind of looked through cards, so we're not totally unfamiliar. But coming into this, anything you're trying to keep in mind?
So I guess just knowing that your accuracy is the problem at the start of the game, because when the zombies, when all your conductive zombies are inspired, they have a way to get +1 damage. But when they're uninspired, they have better accuracy. So most likely, the beginning of the game, you're going to just be swinging 2 swords. And then as the game goes on, you can likely set up attacks to have more dice. So it's like you kind of have to balance how much you want to be working on accuracy versus damage, just because you kind of have this strange transition point once they go down once. That's something I have not really seen enough yet to know like what that right balance is, but it definitely feels like a thing that needs to be kept in mind.
I would agree with that for sure. With those broad concepts in mind, one thing I'll often do, because there's so we're back to the card pool is not like crushingly huge, but with Nether Maze and the Exiled Dead coming with their universals, there's more than there was. So to get traction, a lot of times I'll go through and like, okay, is there anything that's an auto include, like that I would say whatever strategy I'm going for is an auto include, and I'll start in the surges, check the end phases, go through gambits and upgrades. Once I've got those, I'll see like, okay, how much space have I left myself? And then I'll re-examine, are these all really auto includes or are they not? So was there anything in, let's say surges, anything in the surges that you look through available to them that you said, I think this is just an auto include, whatever I'm doing with this deck, I think I want that.
So this will not be shocking to anyone to hear, but sudden revelation is not a sudden revelation. It is something that should go in every single deck to start and then only be taken out if you have a good reason to do so, because it is just so gall darn easy to score.
Yeah.
So for the folks who aren't aware of what this card is, it is a surge where immediately after a power step, if your warband flipped 2 or more feature tokens, specifically not delving, You just have to flip them. So if you have any other ways to flip things, you can also score it with those. You'll score for 1 glory. And when you have a warband where you can move, what is it? 4 fighters and 5 fighters at once. I think maybe you can figure out a way to make this happen. So I think that's sort of the starting point for me. Is like, I'm probably flipping some tokens. Let's put this in.
Yeah, and this is, as you said, it's like great in everybody's deck these days.
Yeah.
It's hard to think of somebody who doesn't want this. So these guys want it more than others because they can a single activation get into the position to do this, and they can do that if Deintalos is alive, or they can do it if Markov is alive, because Markov and Regulus can kind of combine together to make this happen. So that's an easy one. For me, in a similar vein of here's something I can do, it's going to lean towards things that I probably want to do anyway, and it can be scored in a single activation without dice, is Impending Doom. It's a surge for 1 if an enemy fighter has 2 people next to him, 2 of your friendlies next to him. So I thought that was a for sure.
It is so easy when you can just swarm around with so many fighters all at once. It's like, well, I move 2 fighters and score 1 glory. Like that should be something that sets off alarm bells to you to be like, this is going to be good with these guys.
Right.
Like we've already seen it with the Canaan's Reapers. We have multiple moves there off of reactions, and also a little bit with the Cunnin crew, where they can also do moves off of reactions, and just being able to move 2 fighters in 1 action makes this almost trivial. And I feel like these guys make it even easier.
Yeah.
So totally agree.
That what else would you consider an auto include? Anything, or are you?
So at this point, it starts, I think, to get a little bit harder, but I'd be tempted to put Horrors in the Dark in as a very easy one. It's also just scored for moving fighters. So you have to be in cover hexes that are not in your territory, or objectives, which you can't do that piece. So we just forget about it. You just be on 2 cover hexes not in your territory. Right. Given the way the game sets up now with so many cover hexes, like Gloom tokens will count for this. You can very easily just set these up in the middle of the board, and you're probably moving forward somewhat anyway. And so it's like, well, I'll just move forward my guys because I need to, and then they get on these and I score a glory.
So I would agree with that. It does start to get me a little bit nervous with pushing, like being when I start having my positioning dictated to me.
Agreed.
For me, the ideal is that they're both in neutral territory, and I'm able to like kind of still maintain the wall. If they push too far in, I'm worried that Deintalos will have people kind of coming at him around him. But I think we put it in and then re-examine it a bit. My only other one that I think is way up here is Alternating Strikes. I think is pretty solid in this.
Yes. It would certainly be easier if there was another ranged attacker, but it's still not hard. Like there will just be situations where you get multiple fighters able to make attack actions in the same round, or in the same action, I should say. And so, you can pick this up without too much trouble, especially in the early game when your movement's higher. I feel like you can get fighters moved up quickly, and then once you've got somebody surrounded, you can start making those attacks.
And Alternating Strikes also has a thing where if your zombie situation is kind of awkward, if you're with your conductive minions, then Markov can come to the rescue, and both he and Regulus can perform a charge or something if you feel like you have the latitude for that. So I'd say throw it in right now. Those last 2 are maybe borderline auto include, but pretty close. I didn't really have anything else that jumped at me and said you need to take this. But
no, after that, it's kind of like you've got a lot of, I think, solid choices, but it's hard to say that they're like, you must include these. I
Sure.
think you could go a lot of different directions at this point.
Yeah. And encouragingly, we have not used any restricted at this point.
Yes, although I've been liking to think about Sudden Revelation as a restricted card lately, just
Yeah.
because it's like it will be. I can
Yeah.
almost guarantee.
Yeah.
So don't have to right now, obviously, but I think it's a healthy thing to keep in mind because you might just
Sure.
be pulling an extra card,
Yep.
not in the too distant future.
How about end phases? Were there any end phases you thought were auto includes?
Uh, I
I
don't
mean, I'm
know
gonna be
about.
honest. I did not.
Uh,
I struggled a lot with end
yeah,
phases here
I
because it was
I
either uh too difficult and made me worried about positioning, or easy enough but just didn't score enough. So this might be like where the rubber meets the road when it comes to deck building, where we really got to kind of burn
yeah.
some brain cells.
I suppose one that just feels so simple that maybe you just always take it as force dynamic.
Hmm.
Um, so this one is just scored for having one or more of your friendly fighters with 2 move tokens at the end of the round. So if you really wanted to, you could just have one zombie who just sort of runs back and forth in the back while everybody else does whatever it is that you want to do, and you can kind of guarantee some glory here.
Yeah, it's tough for me because so you talk about all the way back to the Shadespire days, where you might say there was this card, Change of Tactics. It was a surge. If you charged, if you took a fighter who was on guard and charged with them, you'd score the surge. So that was effectively, you'd think of it as 2 actions get you a guaranteed glory: one to go on guard, and one to charge.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, guard was not as good as it is now, so there really wasn't nearly as much of a compelling reason to be on guard as there can be these days.
Yep.
This is 2 actions for 1 glory, but it's an end phase glory. So I'm a little reluctant. And in our rivals game, I actually found this a little challenging to score. I made some errors in, I forgot. I wasn't thinking that I cared about objective placement, where in fact I did have some stuff that
Yeah.
cared a little bit about it. Even in the rivals deck. And so they were a little further forward. So all of a sudden I was in the mix and I was like, I don't really want to spend an activation just moving to get that second move token. I kind of want to use it to attack. So my vote's going to be hold this off for a second. We'll come back around, but that's
Sure.
a worthy discussion on it.
Yeah, and I think this is sort of a card that highlights the split point for this warband.
Yeah.
You could probably build them to be very passive and try and just like hang out and score all the easy stuff and hopefully not bleed too much glory.
Yeah.
Or you could flex to be more aggressive.
Yeah.
I think I agree that the flex is probably a little better. But if you're just looking for stuff where it's like, well, this is almost an automatic score, like guaranteed I can make this happen.
Yeah.
That's sort of the only one I looked at where I was like, yep, I guess that's no
Yeah.
matter what, I have control over it. I can make it happen.
Yeah. I'm curious if there will be something like that with Deintalos in the back, scooping up pieces of map fragments. Just being like,
Yeah.
"Yep, we're walking around. I'm reading some maps. What's
I got a
up?"
map. I got a key. Like,
Yeah,
I'm doing some stuff.
yeah. But who knows?
Yeah. So we'll keep that one off.
Okay.
You mentioned that you didn't think that there were any end phases that really were auto includes for you, but like, were there any where you're feeling pretty good, or you're like, yeah, this probably should go in?
uh, frankly, no. I guess the only thing I might say, I felt like Chum the Waters is probably good enough to go in.
I
This
agree.
is one where you have an opponent who has a wound counter and is in a feature token, and that feels like a thing that's going to happen, especially with this warband, because you will end up you'll land hits. It's a thing where you're not one-shotting people; you are throwing a huge pile of attacks at people, and so you're going to hit with like one here and one here, but miss with these 2 or something like that. And
Yeah,
so inevitably, it feels like you're going to leave people wounded.
I agree.
And you can, if they have already moved or charged, you can knock them back into cover if you need to make that happen. I don't. yeah, I it felt like something that you probably just include until you know otherwise. But
Yeah, I've now played with this card a couple times, and given how much people want to be in cover these days, it's turned out to be incredibly simple, especially if you have some way to ping. Now, I don't
yeah,
know that we're going to include
yeah,
ping, and I don't know that this card is enough to push us into wanting ping, but
right.
like it makes it almost trivial if you have
Mm.
ping.
Well, yeah, and that's an interesting point you raise. Is like as you start saying like, well, this is a doable thing, then it starts pushing your other deck, into a
Mhm.
other directions there. So yeah, worth noting.
But chum is for two, so
Hmm.
it's solid in that sense.
Yeah.
One that I'm not sure about, and it's probably worth talking about, is Master the Abyss.
Mm.
So this is one where you need to have three friendly fighters in cover hexes.
Yeah.
So it's a it's a little tough, but no, no worse than Supremacy.
Hmm.
Uh, but after you score it, your opponent gets to deal one damage to one of your fighters that's in a cover hex. So
Yeah.
it's rough, but if they're dealing the damage to one of your conductive fighters, I don't care.
Yeah. So it's the what's challenging here is that if I'd agree. My first instinct was yes, like this seems doable. What I like about it is it doesn't force you into enemy territory. So if I want to be setting up a wall in the back and not shoving, the problem with running at enemy territory is that uh, if they get one, if they have a particularly accurate, maybe a range 2 fighter or something like that, like they get a, I don't know, like a Manok inspired or something, he just starts grabbing people with his like stabbing zombie after zombie to death. They
Yeah.
can get a lot of kills by just putting upgrades onto one fighter who can reach a bunch of them. If you can find a way to uh, do this to score glory without having to push heavily forward, well, now you're in a little bit more business. So, but now that we're in the realm of ping, it's quite possible that they finish off whatever fighter they damage with this.
Yep. It
Maybe worth
is a
it, maybe not.
risk.
Yeah.
Um,
So I don't say auto include, but I am saying we're putting it in.
okay.
Let's throw it in and pull it if we need to.
Sure.
So, um, well, it sounds like we've kind of gotten to the end of what we could think of for auto includes for objectives. We can loop back around once we fill out some of our other autos, if you're down for that.
Sure. Seems like a
Okay.
good idea because then you can kind of build the rest of the objectives around what you're trying to do in your
Sure.
gambits and upgrades.
Yeah. What about gambits? There's one that stands out to me, and I'm gonna keep it to myself, but we'll see if you can see if we landed in the same spot. There's one gambit I was like, this is absolutely going in the deck.
Well, one that jumps out to me right away and won't be around for too terribly much longer that I think deserves a place here is Eternal Chase.
Sure.
Um, so this is a persisting gambit that raises the move characteristic of all fighters, or I guess lowers, to 4,
Hmm.
and makes every fighter a hunter and a quarry. But we don't really
Hmm.
care about those pieces. Like we just want we want move 4 zombies.
Yeah.
And yeah, a whole round of move 4 is pretty sweet.
Sure.
I will say they do have a infection spell that effectively does a similar thing, but it's a spell. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
given the choice, I will take the card that will always work.
Yep. I'm with you there. My auto include was the Sparking Shuffle. This was
Yep.
take 2 conductive minions and push them 2.
Yeah.
I think there's just, especially as we've built already objectives that score off of positioning,
Yes.
positioning alone. Like, yeah, if you can't find something to do with pushing 2 of these guys, then you're not really paying attention, maybe.
Yeah. I mean, so I think every single warband that has one of these, that's just a choose 2 of your fighters and push them 2 hexes. Like it's always going in.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it's somewhat restricted, like I think the one for Starblood Stalkers, it has to be hunters. Like, okay, but like that's over half the warband. Like
Mm-hmm.
I can make this work. This is restricted to conductive minions. but that's 4 of the 6 fighters, like, or 7. But either way, like, you can do something here, and pushing 2 is a lot.
Yeah.
Like, it's just really good. So,
Yeah.
yeah, Sparking Shuffle was on my list. Not a whole lot of like thought even that needs, like, you can find something to do with push 2.
Right. Yeah. Um, I in a well, what else do you have? Do you have any other auto includes in here, or
I'm not 100% sure it's an auto include, but I do like Terrible Dynamism. So
mm,
this one lets you revive fighters with a power card. I don't know that you need to do this. But if for some reason you needed your fighters now rather than later, it does give you an option. I like that it lets you bring back 2
mhm.
like at once, and it's before you would take your action, so then you can actually do something with them. But you also have a lot of efficiency of being able to bring your fighters back anyway. So it does feel a little bit like maybe this is more than you actually need.
Yeah, that was my take. Is that there were a lot of times. I mean, and part of it is falling in the trap of saying like, oh, um, if I don't get 2 with this, then I'm underspending. But uh, remind me, what are with terrible dynamism? What's the raise restriction? Are they coming back adjacent?
It's
Um,
just like the regular raise, so yes, they have to be adjacent to Deintalos when you use it.
okay, but it doesn't have. So you can bring them adjacent, but it doesn't have the at least 2 away, right? It doesn't.
Yeah.
Deintalos
So
has
it
a
just says up to 2 friendly conductive minions that are out of action. Place each chosen fighter in a hex adjacent to your leader and give
yeah,
them raise counters.
yeah. So
So
it's slightly more forgiving,
a little bit.
but yeah, um, yeah. I I would leave it to the side, or I'll put it in, and then but it might be early on for a cut if it comes to it,
Yeah.
if the pressures build up. For me, I would put as an auto include is center of attention. Um,
Yes.
I think center of attention is just a flexible card in general. There's a lot of really cool tricks you can do. Um, because you have so many fighters, if you have an opponent who's, doing something like, I know we don't have a lot of hold objective folks, but somebody's trying to stand on a lot of um, feature tokens. It's even
Hmm.
enough. Like if you get positioned right, you could even disrupt some of these easier things like ever downwards or um, probably not sudden revelation, but maybe if somebody starts delving and then you pull people off of the places where they want to stand, you can disrupt even a very easy to score card like that. Or of course, which is obviously on somebody's mind when they're talking about this warband, you can set up the mega attack
Yeah.
and get lots of so
The super duper mega awesome.
yeah. I think it's a great card always, and I think it's especially great in this one. And so for that reason, I marked it as auto.
I mean, so obviously if you're trying to play around tokens, you pretty much have to have pushes. Um Without distraction, I do sometimes, or at least lately, I've been finding myself reaching for Hypnotic Buzz a lot.
Hmm.
Um, I am not 100% sold that it must be in a lot of decks, but like, if you're going to fight over these tokens and you have a bunch of fighters with inaccurate attacks, sometimes you just need to be able to get somebody off.
Yeah,
Uh, and that is the easiest way to do it. Obviously, center of attention is better, but like, you just play both, and then
sure.
you can even just like run someone forward just so they're in range for Hypnotic Buzz, and that's potentially even a good enough reason to
Yeah,
do that.
absolutely. So, yeah, I'd agree with that. Let's throw that in there specifically because of that. Because you can have, I mean, it could even be shoot. Like I absolutely need to get a fighter off of whatever this particular spot is.
Hmm.
I will bomb Regulus forward, and if Regulus misses with his range 2 halberd, then we'll also
Yeah,
Hypnotic Buzz, and it
right.
can be used to set up stuff. And in the day and age where we start to see more illusions, Hypnotic Buzz is a choose enemy, so you can break illusions with this as well, which
Very.
is uh, which can be a real nice turnaround. I sure wish I had it when I was playing Gerard. So
Yeah, would have been nice.
yeah. All right. I think that's good for me on auto includes. We can cycle back around. Right now we got 5. We got half our gambits filled up
Yeah,
already.
they're all
Any
solid.
upgrades? Upgrades was yeah. Um, for upgrades, this is where a lot of that discussion about like, man, I really want to make sure that we're taking care of or protecting Deintalos.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the case where like you probably still take great fortitude and let it go on him
Yes, I think
just as
so.
extra protection. Um, I think you don't care if he gives up 2 glory because you're already bleeding. You know, if they've gotten through the wall,
Yeah, I mean,
then you're in trouble anyway.
yeah. If you've lost him, you
Mm.
now can't revive your super squishy zombies.
Hmm.
Uh, things are about to get really bad for you, and I think just having that ability to keep him alive, even if it's like one activation longer, could be a really big deal. So I definitely agree. You need to have some way. Um, so I would certainly include that. Um, I do think Darkening Stone is also pretty useful here.
Mm.
Um, Now, of course, you can't give it to your leader, so it's not
Mm.
helpful for keeping Deintalos alive. But being able to have somebody who's always in a cover hex is useful for improved survivability, helps with scoring some of this stuff that we've got for cover hexes. And I mean, if you really are in dire straits, you could view it as a way to help keep Prentice Markov alive, so that he can keep bringing back Regulus.
Yeah, let's mark it. If we don't feel like we care enough about cover, then we take another look at it.
Yep.
There was a faction card that I thought was good enough, had cool enough positioning and offensive capability that it should be included. And this is Powered Command. It goes on Deintalos, but it's a reaction. There's no range limit on this, which is pretty impressive. After an attack action that took a friendly conductive minion out of action, place that fighter in a hex adjacent to the attacker and give that fighter 1 raise counter, then break this card. Uh, so this, it could be somebody. I mean, it could be somebody taking a shot at one of your zombies, like shooting
Yeah.
from range 3. You react, bring that person, bring that conductive minion back to life next to the person. Um, it's the way I feel like this can really set up some bad choices for you. Where like, there's an upgraded zombie next to me. Even if I kill it, it's gonna pop back up and be next to me again.
Yeah.
Now I'm subject to the dance macabre, or Deintalos's dance dynamic, I guess is what it is in this warband. So
Mm-hmm.
that seemed good to me, good enough to me that I would just include it until experience told me otherwise.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. It also really helps with the positioning battle, just because there will be situations where you really need your fighter to stay like further out in the field, but you don't want Deintalos to have to run forward. And so then it's like, oh no, I can bring them back, but then they have to run all the way back forward or whatever.
Sure.
This gives you at least one opportunity to keep a fighter forward that you need to be there.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. Anything else for you on the autos?
I'm not really sure that anything else is an auto include, but I'm really intrigued by Dynamic Stabilizer.
This is the damage reduction one.
Yeah, so this is a restricted upgrade to Deintalos or Markov, and when a friendly conductive minion, so a fair number of your fighters, are within 2 hexes and are dealt damage, you reduce that damage by 1. Um, it's not a huge deal for a 2 wound fighter to reduce damage by 1, because there'll be plenty of situations where they still die. But like in all the situations where it does matter, it's gonna
Mm.
feel awful. But like I said, maybe not enough that you actually take it, but I just feel like it could flip. I mean, it effectively makes all of your little guys 3 wounds instead of 2.
Mm-hmm.
That's a pretty big deal. I don't know if they're like, I don't know. You just upgrades tend, you tend to run out of space pretty quickly because
Sure.
there's a lot of good things that you could take.
Yeah.
And this is not an auto include. So, but since I, faction specific stuff usually does something very creative and different. So it was definitely one that I have been looking at and wondering about.
Yeah. Of those two, there's the dynamic stabilizer, which is damage reduction, and damage enhancer, dynamic enhancer, which is damage increase. That one looks pretty cool to me.
Yeah.
If it only goes off on one attack in the round, that's great strength for that attack.
Right.
Which is an upgrade right there. If it goes off on two, then I think the potential upside on dynamic enhancer is pretty substantial.
Yeah. I mean, my sort of so I take a little different philosophy when I'm first putting together lists. So I have like a bunch more cards pulled right now, but I usually just grab everything that I think might go in the deck and then sort of start pruning instead. So these are two that really I was like, well, I'm going to put these in at least to start and then think about more. So
all right,
I
we'll
definitely
include
have
them both
there.
and all right. So enhancer and stabilizer, throw them in. Anything else? So I think that hits like the must takes. The only, well, I'll tell you this. Here's one I think is an auto include, and it would be our first restricted pick. I think Berserker Rage is maybe
because you
auto.
can your fighter can keep coming back with it because I mean you don't care if they're gonna die, they're gonna die anyway.
Right.
But it is restricted to range 1, correct?
It is. Yep.
Okay. So
any of your conductive minions, or I guess Markov, if Markov's feeling really saucy.
Oh boy.
Which honestly, if he's inspired, he would be up to 3 smash, 3 damage Grievous, which is
pretty scary.
Yeah, it's not nothing.
I mean, Coil also comes to mind as being pretty good for this. I mean, he's going to be 3 fury, 3 damage. That's nothing to sneeze at. And
if he's inspired and the target's staggered, all of a sudden he's 3 fury with a reroll of 4 damage. He's putting some gross hits out.
He can bring you down. So I definitely I like that one. We should throw it in. I think we haven't picked any yet. So I mean, we got 3 spots.
So let's do that as maybe a next thing. We've kind of gone through, we've hit anything we thought were auto includes, and then kind of talked about some of the ones that we were like, this is almost auto include. Let's think about it. Let's go back through. Let's say we've got Berserker Rage in, we got 2 more restricted slots. Trying to decide how to use those is an interesting thing. I'm going to throw this at you here because this is a break point, right? There's a 2 restricted package that you could include, but there's a downside to doing so. And this is if you include everything to prove and underdog. Now both those, so everything to prove, your opponent gets primacy, you get to surge 1. That's 100% going to happen.
Yep.
Underdog, this is your opponent has primacy. It will almost certainly happen in the end phase, and that's because you are unless you manage to stack certain upgrades and get the dice to go in your favor, you're not going to be one-shotting a whole lot. That would use up the rest of your restricted, and it would guarantee that primacy is in play for the game, which for obvious reasons is a problem. So I think the question is it worth bringing primacy in and using up the last year restricted in order to do that? Now we already have 4 surges in here. I think the bigger deal is having underdog in there. Gets you another 2 glory end phase, which feels attractive, but maybe not worth it. What are your thoughts there?
So it's interesting. I think the potential risk is that you're handing your opponent 3 extra spent glory for 3 glory worth of upgrade or objectives that you feel are almost automatically scored. I don't know that that's I almost have been thinking lately that like unless you feel like you can take advantage of primacy, you shouldn't play it anymore because
Mm,
you're giving up a lot of glory for not a lot of benefit.
yeah,
Al- Although, as you mentioned, we are really, really tight on good end phases for these guys.
yeah.
So,
Well,
um,
let's hold off on those for now.
mhm.
We'll take a look. If we're having trouble finding other things, haha,
Yeah.
then we'll come back. What else? Was there anything else in the restricted list that you found attractive to you?
uh, I mean, so like contest of equals is always a little bit attractive.
Yeah.
Um, you're gonna be rolling enough dice that it kind of feels like it's just gonna happen.
Well, yeah, and here's the thing: is it's you say rolling enough dice. Well, absolutely. Like people are going to be trying to pick up easy kills on you, so you're going to be swinging. You may still stop some of them. Probably not, but maybe. But you're throwing out 2 or 3 attacks in
Yeah.
one dance dynamic, and some of those are going to miss, and they're going to whiff on the defense, and you just score this. So that feels pretty attractive to me too.
Yeah.
Uh,
So I think that one, it's like, yep, I think we can manage that.
okay.
The question then becomes like, now that we are leaning a little more into dice rolling, do we then do something like trying to get accuracy bonuses and then trying to score branching fate?
Mm,
Or do we try and lean into something that's more like
I
reckless swing?
Yeah, I'm a hard pass on branching fate with if you don't start with any fighters on 3 fury. Like it feels like then
I
you
think,
cannot score it in
yeah,
your opening hand, and that's one of its advantages is that in someone like Far Striders that's just going to shoot a whole bunch. They can score that without putting themselves in as much risk as some of these
yeah,
others. So
and I think that that is a very fair criticism and is definitely something I considered. It's not like it's why it's one of the ones I was considering, but late
yeah,
because it's like maybe you roll enough dice, and later in the game when you're getting plus dice, maybe it's doable. But like
hmm
first half of the game, it's almost impossible.
um, well, while we're on the subject of surges, I don't have another. So we've talked about 2 possible restricted surges. Um, if we can find 2 that we feel okay about, that leaves those restricted available elsewhere. I feel okay about direct strike. Now it goes a little counter to my thing I just said about needing upgrades. Although to be fair, there's a way in early on. But if you can do 3 damage with an attack,
Mm-hmm.
um, then you score. So it doesn't need a kill. It can be a kill. It can be an overkill if you want. It just has to be a successful damage 3 attack.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that feels pretty good. And it may be a thing you're trying to do to bring down bigger fighters. Swarm around them, get one of those damage 3 hits in.
Yeah, certainly one I was considering. Another one that I was looking at was Dread Puppetry, just because if you revive Regulus, you just score it. So,
Mm,
like, is Regulus going to die? And then can you make sure that you revive him when you're holding this card? It's not likely, but it's like it's also not dice. So
yeah, it's tough because it's easy. It's easy when it's available, but it's one that if
yeah,
Markov dies or if Regulus doesn't die,
yeah,
uh, or if
it's
the timing doesn't work out. Yeah,
very out of your control,
yeah.
which is sort of why I also don't like the ones that require dice. But you will be rolling dice.
Let me ask you this one. What about ever downwards? This is delve 3 times. This
Yeah,
is something you can do, and this is if we want to be in the realm of like, hey, we can sit back a little bit more.
I certainly thought about it. Yeah, and I guess because you can delve the gloom tokens, even though it's
Sure. Yeah.
not necessarily doing you anything. So yeah, I mean, you just move everybody on and then delve.
Okay.
So yeah,
That's going in.
okay.
So ever downwards is in.
I think
Uh,
if we include ever downwards, though, horrors in the dark starts to feel worse because now it's the only thing that's pushing us towards enemy territory.
mhm.
They do kind of work together. And so I
Yeah.
guess like it's just you have to be much more forward thinking about your placement because you
hmm
are going to probably need to put at least one of your objectives in no one's territory.
Yeah. Uh, what if we go? Let's see. What if we have impending doom, alternating strikes, ever downwards, sudden revelation. Uh, we could cut horrors, have contest to equals just to happen,
Mm-hmm.
and that means we need one more surge. Do you have a candidate?
Not, not really. Reckless swing is one I'd thought about, but again, like it's it's outside of your control. The positioning, like, you just might not have the charge
Mm.
into supported.
And we don't do a ton of charging. We
Yeah.
do a lot of moving and attacking. Our this deck is
Well,
going to be loaded up on pushes,
and you
right?
don't.
So
Yeah, and you don't have to charge. You just have to be making an attack.
sure, but often charging is how you
Yeah,
take advantage of things.
you would
Okay,
set it up with a charge, but
I'm all right. I'm all right giving that a shot. Let's see if that could be the case.
if they come to
We
us,
could be wrong.
yeah, if they come to
Yeah,
us, then it's like, hey, maybe this is easier to set up.
but I think you're even willing to like if you have this in hand, you might be willing to solo charge a zombie early on into enemy territory. Just get
Yeah,
your one glory off of this, and then if they kill him, cool. I'll bring him back in my territory
yeah,
when I do my next dance.
yeah. I mean, in Regulus
Okay.
theoretically can set this up in some interesting ways because with Reach 2, he could end up standing next to just one enemy fighter, swinging at another one.
Well, we're talking about reckless swing.
Oh, it has to be
Give
range
that a read.
one. Yep,
Almost
yep, yep,
certainly a
yep,
range
yep.
one. Yep. So
No, it does. I always
yeah.
forget about that. You're
All
correct.
right. So I'll cut horrors. I will add. Um, I'll add reckless swing. We'll see if that's two. That's
Yeah.
because that we could score that with them coming to us.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So that's our surges.
Cool.
The two objectives for the end phase we have are Chum the Waters, Master the Abyss, which are both 2 glories, which are pretty nice. So we need 4 more end phase. We're at 10 glory in the deck. I think there's room to take a couple 1 glory ones, but let's do a little thinking about what if there's any other 2 glories that we would do. Master the Abyss, like I said, we have, and Chum the Waters. Those are our 2 end phases right now.
I mean, Dead Unbound is certainly simple.
This is 2 that are not 2 that are uninspired. Is that?
It's just 1 or more surviving friendly conductive minions are uninspired.
Oh, okay.
Just have brought 1 of them back.
Yeah,
Seems fine to me.
sure.
It's not worth much, but it's super easy.
Yeah, let's put on that.
I mean,
Dead Unbound.
and like if you're if you are in a game where you can't score this,
Yeah,
I mean, okay.
cruise control, my good man.
Yeah.
All right.
But other than that, it starts to get tough.
Yeah, dynamic chain is one that gets a little tricky because we're asking our fighters to maybe spread out a little bit if we're trying to get Master the Abyss and ever downwards. That gets a little trickier. So
it does. I was just looking at that one as well, thinking this is not the easiest thing to set up. Forbidden Lore. Have each surviving friendly fighter with 1 or more charge or move tokens.
Yeah, I don't mind that. And then let's do that, and let's try your force dynamic. This is the 1 fighter has 2 move things. We're starting to position a deck that is more about let's try and do stuff in our territory, have them come to us, and we'll swarm them on the counter strike if we get the chance.
Yeah,
because I think that's still happening.
Yeah,
all right.
That puts us at 14 glory, which is not terrible. You'd kind of like it to be higher, but I think most decks these days you have a hard time seeing more than 16. So this should all be very doable, and you can probably be somewhat defensive.
That's true. All right, so we have ourselves something for scoring in our territory. Let's see. You got us at 14. I am shy 1. So what I have is Forbidden Lore, Force Dynamic, Dead Unbound, Chum the Waters, Master the Abyss. Is there another one you have in there?
Oh, yes. I do have one in there that's not supposed to be.
Okay.
So I had Strict Tutor in there just as one that I was thinking about, and I don't
Mm.
think we're going that direction.
Okay.
Because this is Markov cast one spell.
Yeah. Happens in Rivals. Rivals Plus, a little more. Or Rivals Plus, maybe not. And then
Yeah.
Championship, let's hope not.
Yeah, let's hope
Um,
not.
Well, so the problem we're having right here, this is a good reason why I think you see people online discussing the possibility of the Magic deck, because you're so hard up for two glory end phases that you start thinking like, oh, well,
Yeah.
maybe if I do cast 3, uh, there is an upgrade called Prison of Grief, I believe,
That's
which gives you a reaction
reaction.
spell. People come in, it goes on a focus. So that's a reaction spells are a really good way, especially repeatable reaction spells are a really good way to get off extra spells in a
Sure
particular.
are.
But I don't know if that's enough to make this something.
Yeah, and it's not really where I was. I mean, we'd have to sort of retool the whole deck if we wanted to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and then you start saying like, well, I got to make sure I include enough gambit spells to have some insurance there, and I don't like taking. I would want to have multiple ways of scoring off that for that to be the case. So
Yeah.
Basically, we're looking for one more end phase. If we think we're happy on 14 glory, then a 1 would do us.
Yeah, I mean, if we could have something with more, I think it would be good.
Yeah.
I'm looking right now.
I thought about Magical Mark for a little bit. This is the end phase of a friendly wizard is holding an objective. Oh, I know what we want. I've got it. Maybe I don't. This might be a little counter to, but there's a pseudo hold, and this I'm going to give a tip of the hat to Alex in our group who was using it in his Ravagers Kagra's deck. Because they would frequently desecrate objectives and then not be able to hold them. But there's Trace the Ley Lines, which says have one fighter within 1 hex of objective 1, or 3 fighters within 3 hexes of objective 3, like depending on the turn. That's a possibility. And then the other one is Wasteland. Wasteland's gonna just kind of score.
Yeah,
I think Wasteland might be it, right?
It's definitely easy, and it definitely is. We're all about flips right now, and so there's ways to make that happen.
I'm going to throw Wasteland in. It'd be interesting to see with things like Sudden Revelation if you flip to score Sudden Revelation and then get killed off of that objective, and then all of a sudden you've got one hanging open that you haven't been able to flip back. But
yeah,
certainly
a possibility.
But I'm willing to give that an attempt here. So 14 feels a little loose, but we'll see what we can do in the power deck.
Yeah.
Let me read off what we have in the gambits right now. We got Eternal Chase, Hypnotic Buzz, Center of Attention, Sparking Shuffle, Terrible Dynamism, Cover of Darkness. I don't even remember putting that in there, but
well,
definitely
we hadn't talked about it, but yes, it should be in there. It was one that I had pulled as well. I think that's a very powerful one, and interestingly enough, it also can protect you against ping damage for a turn if you're worried about that. I don't know that we need to be worried about that, but
I mean, need to be more worried about it than before. So
that is for sure.
Yeah. So let's see. We have Terrible Dynamism is a little bit of the outlier here. The rest are all movement. We have four pushes, either friendly or enemy, and we have opponent movement thing. I think with Eternal Chase, it makes Heated Instinct pretty interesting to me, specifically because that one will also work on Regulus or Markov or Deintalos, and being able to push Deintalos is potentially going to save his bacon.
It very well could.
And I, as we have discussed many a time, if you can't find a way to use a push, look at the board again, because there probably is a way to use a push.
Almost certainly. So yeah, I mean, it's essentially sidestep with 1 round of upside, which definitely feels good. And if we end up putting any quarry upgrades in the deck, then we can make that work as well.
Sure. That puts us at 7, maybe cutting Terrible Dynamism, depending. So we have 3 or 4 spots. We currently are sitting on, because we do have Contest to Equals and Berserker Rage, we have 1 restricted left. You got to decide, is this a deck that we want to get to our extra pushes? Are we doing the Duel of Wits thing?
I think we certainly could.
We
And
could.
I do know that when you're doing this sort of I need to be in certain spots, having extra cards can often be a really big deal.
Oh, you know what I just realized though? If we don't want to spend the restricted on this, there is Dark Sacrifice.
Yes, and
Yeah.
so Dark Sacrifice would give us some more cards without having to use up anything else.
For folks who don't know, Dark Sacrifice is in that Arena Mortis 2, and that is after a gambit or attack action that takes one or more friendly fighters out of action, draw 2 power cards. So
yes,
I think that's a bump. Yep.
Okay, so if we're starting to take the stuff that benefits us from having fighters die, do we have room for Omega's Offering?
I think so. Let's do that. I like that because you could put that on Coil, right?
Yeah.
They might care to kill him, and you say no, thank you,
yeah.
or put it on whoever you've upgraded.
Right.
Omega's Offering, done and done. And that one is nice because it doesn't occupy a restricted slot.
Does not.
Here, let's see. We're filling up real quick here. I want to throw out a couple interesting ones, and I don't know if they make the cut, but these are kind of around the edges. So one of these is let me see if I can find it. Oh, Vicious Struggle. Here's what I like about this, particularly with what we've already done in this deck. Vicious Struggle is two. So the card text or the card describes like having, basically like a friendly and an enemy fighter are fighting over something. The card art has 2 Zarbag's kids fighting each other.
Yeah.
So the gets are a little confused on this card, which is fine. Yeah. Choose one enemy fighter and one friendly fighter with no charge tokens that is adjacent to that fighter. Give each chosen fighter 1 move token. If there was a warband that this was made for, then that is actually Soul Raid, because the fish is going to do this to people. But yes. If there was a second warband that this is chosen for, I would say it might well be this one, because you, unlike other warbands, you're not getting adjacent to fighters by charging. You're doing it by moving. And as an added benefit, you might even score yourself the Forbidden Lore, the one that needs 2 move counters on somebody.
Yeah. That's something I hadn't considered, but that definitely is a way to get an extra move counter without actually making a move. So that's pretty nifty.
So this is, you can walk up to somebody, surround them with a bunch of people, a bunch of zombies, and then Vicious Struggle them. Now they can't charge or walk away. They're stuck being right there, and maybe they'll take a zombie out, or maybe they'll have to burn power cards to push. But either way, I think there's potential on this. So that's one. Yeah. Keep that in mind.
Yep.
And then my other one, briefly thought about Illusory Maze. This is the trap reaction after an enemy fighter's move action. If that fighter has 1 or more illusion upgrades, give them a charge token. Almost never comes up.
Yep.
The other one is Stagger that fighter. Staggering when you have inspired fighters is good. That wasn't as interesting to me as the Unfair Fight. And this is reaction. Play this during a friendly fighter's attack action. You have to declare attack action step. If that friendly fighter has 1 or more supporting fighters, stagger the target. The attack action has Grievous until it has been resolved. This has a lot of cascading benefits, especially while you still have inspired fighters. So staggering will unlock the +1 damage, which exists on the inspired fight side of these fighters. And then Grievous helps out here. I think there's a lot to like here. And then the stagger is going to maintain if you get it early. And then you keep throwing attacks later in the round. That can help on that. So,
yeah, there's a lot you can do with this card. I think it's pretty strong. I was considering both this one and Inspired Attack, but I think Inspired Attack's hard just because you have to use it early. Like, it's powerful, but like, I don't know that you're ever gonna want to just bomb in a like Coil or something early in the game. And if you draw it late, you probably just can't use it. So but I do like the Unfair Fight. I think that's a solid one.
Oh, you know what I just remembered, by the way? We're going to have to walk back to our game. Somebody's been shouting at us for the last 15 minutes. And listener, I heard you from in the distant future. I heard you. We can't take unfair fight. That is a reaction, and reactions cannot be played during the
Oh, you're
dance dynamic.
very
So,
correct. During the attack action.
yeah.
That sucks.
Okay. Let's throw unfair fight, and then our decision point kind of becomes vicious struggle or terrible dynamism. And I don't know if you have a strong feeling between the two of those.
I think vicious struggle is going to be more useful, especially since we're running forbidden lore, like you said. We want more move counters. Well, forbidden lore and force dynamic, right?
Yeah.
Stack 2 on one fighter, or just get an extra one on somebody who doesn't even have one yet.
Sure.
So yeah, take it out. Terrible dynamism. Probably didn't need it anyway.
All right. So our gambit pool looks like Eternal Chase, 5 1 2, 5 different pushes, a control card with vicious struggle, unfair fight, which is a offensive boost, and dark sacrifice for card draw, and Omega's offering for helping with the bleed and helping with our relatively low glory ceiling on there. Upgrades, we're sitting on 4 right now. Yep. And we actually still have a restricted to give. We may just make this a 2 restricted deck so that we don't have to change it when Sudden Revelation gets restricted. But Great Fortitude, Berserker Rage, Dynamic Enhancer, Dynamic Stabilizer are the ones that we're looking at right now. There's some ways you could go with more Arena Mortis 2. Discouragement from attacking sort of things. Some of the prime candidates in there are what you have, Screaming Demise,
which I think that's probably
the Dying Curse.
I think Screaming Demise is the one I find as being the most frustrating to deal with, just because it's like, if I do this too soon, I lose an activation.
Yeah.
Which is really rough. And so then you're like, well, I can't attack that fighter.
Sure.
At least not yet. And that is the kind of stuff that gets somebody off their game plan in a hurry.
Yeah.
So I actually really like that one. The other one is good. I don't know. What do you think? Do we just go all in on the death stuff and just lean all the way in? It's -2 wounds, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's usually just going to kill somebody.
Well, to a minimum of 1. So if they're already damaged, then yes, then they are in trouble.
And so that's the thing. Like with this warband, you probably are putting out a few wound counters, and then you kind of just accidentally end up dead. It's like, oh, I already had 2 wound counters, and then I lost 2 wounds. Uh-oh.
Yeah, let's throw it in for now. We may cut one of those if we find that we're hurting for other things.
Okay.
I was initially kind of resistant to the dynamic stabilizer. Just in my head, I was like, I kind of feel like they're going to die anyway. I'll say this though, it's going to protect you if somebody is ranged with Grievous, gets that on there or something like that. Then you can avoid the feels bad from people landing crits in there and just getting lucky. Like I think there may be enough to make that, and it also helps with our glory bleed situation. So I'm going to say maintain that. So like Great Fortitude, Berserker Rage, Dying Curse, Screaming Demise, Dynamic Enhancer, Dynamic Stabilizer. Our only offensive help right now in anywhere in our power deck, we have Berserker Rage, Dynamic Enhancer, and Unfair Fight. You can kind of count the pushes because they're gonna get us extra attacks. Like they're kind of stealth offensive upgrades, giving supports and attacks and all that sort of thing. But I wouldn't mind a little more help here.
Well, we still have great strength available.
We do. I think that's great. Get it on Regulus while he's still up and inspired. Okay.
It's always
let me throw
a good choice.
Yeah. These guys are beasts, and you know what that means.
Oh yeah. I mean, new card, whatever it's called.
Yeah.
The silly +2 dice.
Yeah. Powerful jaws, biting jaws.
Ferocious Bite
Ferocious
is
bite.
what it's
Ferocious
called.
biting jaws.
What
My,
a
what big
silly card.
teeth you
Look,
have.
hey, +1 dice for your range 1 attack actions, but hey, you are a beast, so why not? +2.
Yeah.
It's almost certainly got to be restricted, right? Like, we were already seeing +1 dice for ranged 1 restricted just by itself. +2 dice is silly.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we'll be very accurate. Damage is not really a huge concern, but like Great Strength and Berserker Rage both give us ways to deal a little bit more. And then
Mm-hmm.
Dynamic Enhancer, if you can set it up, that can
Mm-hmm.
certainly do some work too.
Yeah.
So by my count, we have 2 more slots.
We do. I don't know that this makes the cut, but there's Honed Instincts. It gives innate single support to his fighter's range 1 attack actions.
Mm-hmm.
It has some additional stuff for if it's a companion, which looks really cool.
Yeah.
But that
Do you,
maybe.
do you think there will be a lot of times where these fighters don't have support?
Hmm. Oh, you know what I just remembered, by the way? We're going to have to walk back to our game. Somebody's been shouting at us for the last 15 minutes. And listener, I heard you from in the distant future. I heard you. We can't take unfair fight. That is a reaction, and reactions cannot be played during the
You're
dance dynamic.
very correct. During the attack action.
Yeah.
That sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess we didn't even mention that in the overview. So for
Yeah.
folks who don't know, so this warband has these 2 different activations, Dance Dynamic and Puppeteer, which are what basically make the warband go. You can either use Deintalos to make all of the conductive fighters move or attack, or you can use Markov to make Regulus and him do an action. And both of them at the end just say, reactions cannot be used during this action. And since they're super actions, you have to wait all the way to the end to get to do any reacting at all, which is really nice when you're blocking your opponent's reactions and really horrible when you have to block all your own. So yeah, we'll keep thinking. I mean, I think we had pulled a couple extra options, but my brain has since moved on.
We pulled terrible dynamism, so for lack of something better for right now,
Here we can
we'll
just
put that
slot it back
in.
I have to imagine we could also. There's probably other options we could bounce around, but
I mean, there's still punching up or inspired attack or something like that. So
yeah,
because we have the restricted to give. So
sure. Well, let's finish up the upgrades, and then maybe we can consider what else we're still lacking.
Yeah.
So at this point, we've got some survivability. We could theoretically take more. We've got a handful of damage boosts, a couple accuracy boosts. I guess I'm inclined to think let's either go more damage to just try and threaten and keep people thinking they don't want to get too close, or really go stacking survivability.
Yeah, you know what? The only thing we have to help survivability right now on Deintalos is great fortitude, right?
Yeah, and that's sort of where I'm leaning. Is it's like, hey, let's get him something else.
Yeah. Do you options? There could be. You could go with an illusion to be able to put it on early. Hopefully, he's not vulnerable early, but something like Phantom Shield to jump him to 2 block.
Yeah,
as a possibility.
I think that could work. I think if you're gonna go the illusion route, Shadowkeeper's also one. I mean, just be on guard for a whole round could be important.
Yeah, single dice on shield isn't.
Yeah, it's not great.
I guess actually, if we don't take a restricted, and there's always Silent Helm.
Yeah, Silent Helm. You can get another plus wound as well. If we take
Oh,
whatever it's called, the quarry one, it makes you
oh,
slower
sure.
though.
Yeah.
What is that called?
Impressive bulk.
Impressive bulk. I
Yeah.
actually, since he can move multiple times, I kind of like it.
Let's do it.
It gets you up to 6 wounds, which is pretty nice.
Yeah.
If you're pushing more wounds anyway, and he doesn't really care about being slower.
Hmm.
I don't think.
So impressive
Mhm.
bulk, great fortitude are Deintalos improvements in survivability, and they may on occasion help out a zombie. Although impressive bulking and uninspired zombie is going to be a bummer.
Speed one.
Yeah, here I come. One more. So ferocious bite for accuracy, great strength for damage, berserker rage for both, fortitude and bulk for Deintalos survivability, dying curse, screaming demise for discouraging, killing people,
Yep.
enhancer for damage, stabilizer um, for survivability on the mooks. Um, we can go even more damage. I don't know that there's a lot more accuracy out there.
Not unless we want restricted stuff, really.
Mm,
Um, there's a couple new options that give you supports, but like I said before, I do feel like we're gonna have supports pretty frequently.
mm.
Um, I just don't know that we need that.
Yeah. Well, then we could, I mean, back to that innate support thing, right? Is that?
Yeah. So I mean, that's an option. Otherwise, you got stuff like, man, it's tough. I don't know.
There's a weird one that I don't know. I always want to try to include it in range one war bands like Wormspat or Steelhearts or something like that. Where you've got this is more for if you've got one beefy range one fighter, and that's the prey scent, where if somebody ends an
Oh yeah.
activation within two, you get to react to push them towards you. It has a weird one if somebody has a lot of hunger on them. I don't know that that helps here, other than it will, if somebody tries to land nearby, you can drag them into a fighter to set up a better dance dynamic. That might be a little too
Hmm.
situational.
Yeah. Could I mean it's another push, and it's an
Yeah,
enemy push, but they have to end their action near us, right? So
yeah, and not
mm,
kill the guy who was on. And
yeah.
yeah, there's more damage like Savage Strength or Feral Symbiote, or I feel like
Yeah.
we're doing okay there. Could throw another. I don't. I mean, yeah, I guess a lot of our you get the timing right, but yeah, Phantom Shield for a little extra defense on Deintalos or a zombie that you really want to survive through to land an attack.
And
Um,
maybe that's enough because like there's just enough times where all you really need is to survive one more attack. And it's like,
yeah,
well, all right, here we go.
yeah,
I think I'd be okay with that option.
yeah.
Um,
I had thought Blunt Force Master for a little bit to give somebody a stagger on theirs, but it's only on range one or two, and the problem is that like you're counting on one particular attack to hit. So,
yeah, and these guys are not
um,
super
oh,
accurate.
or if we want to go totally off the edge, Cursed Key, we could throw
Oh, sure.
an
I
encrusted
mean,
key on somebody.
could
Let's try that.
have just bring more glory.
Yeah,
Sure. Yeah.
yeah. You can put it on a zombie that you keep bringing back, and make sure that that one lives and it is in a cover hex at the end.
Yeah. Now I guess then the question is if we're gonna play additional um glory upgrades, do you take the map fragment or do you take the key?
I'm gonna say the key. I think the map, because the map early on is an action which you're not going to have
You don't want to give up
spare,
actions, yeah.
and then late it's the reaction, and you have to have more than just the one. So
Yeah. I mean right now
um,
it's you can ignore the second half of the card. So
yeah, yeah. Uh, revisit at a later date if the other maps look cool. But
sure.
cool. Well, that's our deck. The only one that well, I guess the Gambit. We did throw. What did we throw back in? Oh, I put inspired attack, but it could be inspired attack. It could be inspired attack. It could be terrible dynamism. You
Yeah,
have a strong
yeah.
feeling on one of those. It could be, I don't know, confusion, countercharge.
I was just
Um,
thinking about confusion and countercharge because I was like,
yep.
well, do we just want more pushes? Like countercharge, and countercharge has an interesting play with stuff like vicious struggle.
Hmm.
It's a way to just push next to somebody, but they'll already have charged, so I guess you don't really care in that case. Kind of like countercharge, though. Once you get a slower fighter into a position early,
Sure.
um,
Yeah, if he's already done his job by scoring you one of those others, he's out on a different hex and they come in. Let's throw that in for now,
sure.
and we are push-tastic in this thing. I love
Oh
it.
yeah, yeah. I
Yeah,
mean, you kind of have to be, right.
yeah. Okay,
Seems pretty good.
so listener, we got there. We have a deck that looks like this for the surges: Impending Doom, Alternating Strikes, Contest of Equals, Ever Downwards, Reckless Swing, and Sudden Revelation. Our end phase are Wasteland, Forbidden Lore, Force Dynamic, The Dead Unbound, and then Chum the Waters and Mash the Abyss for our bigger scores. Gambits are Eternal Chase, Heated Instinct, Hypnotic Buzz, Center of Attention, Countercharge, Dark Sacrifice, Omega's Offering, Sparking Shuffle, Cover of Darkness, and Vicious Struggle. We have Impressive Bulk, Great Fortitude, Great Strength, Berserker Rage, Dying Curse, Screaming Demise, Dynamic Enhancer, Dynamic Stabilizer, Encrusted Key, and Ferocious Bite. Rounds out our full set. I feel okay about that. If you have built one of these and you are saying like, man, you have overlooked something, or I've already tried this particular card, it's no good, then let us know. We'd be happy to hear it. Phil, you have any other thoughts before we wrap up?
No, but I'm excited to see what people do with these guys. They seem complicated enough that they're going to need some time to sort of shake out. But I think they'll be good for people who want to stick with them. I think.
Mm. Yeah, I think so. I think steep learning curve, low floor, high ceiling. That's a pretty fun dynamic to be working through. I do know that Skylar got to play Zach from the Path to Glory crew, Requisite, in the online league. And he said they had some pretty incredible games. So I'm looking forward to hearing more about those.
Nice.
Yeah. Uh, well, we are going to try and get some games in this. Our tentative next episode, and we are back on our 2-week cycle. Our tentative next episode will be a bat rep, where we play a game and then go back through the recording and kind of break down the thought processes of how that went.
Yeah.
So hopefully we can do that. We may even see if we can rope somebody in and have a commentator or something like that. That was another good option there.
Sure.
If you want to get in touch with us, at WTHcast and whatthehexcast@gmail.com. A couple episodes still out from now, but we are still planning on doing our sort of our oddball card episode, where cards that you think are overlooked, that are better than they seem, or that people are sleeping on, or just that are weird in corner case, but you love them anyway. We're going to try and do an episode all about that kind of loved corner of the card collection. So let us know if you got something for that. You can check out all the Mortal Realms content on themortalrealms.com. You go take a look, all the different podcasts doing their things. We thank them for having us. We thank Games Workshop for the review copies that we receive, or we make this content possible. And I think that just brings us to recommended listening. And I'm going to recommend Electric Feel by MGMT. Phil, any last thoughts?
Let's have some awesome games with all this new content.
Let's do it. For What the Hex, I've been Davey.
I've been Phil.
Let me read off what we have in the gambits right now. We got Eternal Chase, Hypnotic Buzz, Center of Attention, Sparkling Shuffle, sparkling.
Sparking.
Ooh,
But
that's for the
yes.
vampires. Sparking shuffle.